Hey guys, this is FSX23. This is a video I have been planning to make for quite some time. And this is a response to all the Creationist channels who actively block comments, edit comments, set their comments for approval, and generally control the discussion on their channels in a way that supports their own position. Prime examples of this would be Slaves for Christ, ID Quest. I'm sure if you're on YouTube enough, you've seen tons of other examples. So this video is going to be a counterexample to that. And in this video and in this video alone, I'm going to edit every single creationist comment, post it on here. I'm going to block it. I'm going to delete it. And I'm only going to let atheists speak. You can say whatever you want. I'm going to let it go. But if it's a creationist comment, I'm just going to block it because I guess you guys aren't interested in honest discussion. And on this video, not all my videos, but this video, I guess I'm not interested in honest discussion either. So if you're creationist, please comment on this page. Please comment on this video, and I will be sure to get back to you and delete your comment. And if you're an atheist and you just want to vent and get something out there, well, have at it. You have this video to do that. All right, let's start with creationist's favorite topic, and that is the topic of evolution. Now, evolution is a fact. ID is not science. ID is simply religion disguised as science so that they can try to push it into the public classrooms because they aren't content with keeping their religion in the church or their houses or among their friends. They want to push their religion on other people. Now, there are no serious scientists who support intelligent design. Let me say that one more time. There are zero serious scientists who support intelligent design. Now, yes, the intelligent design movement has relied on lobbyists, and yes, they have found people with scientific degrees, but these guys are not researchers. They are not working in the fields of evolution. They simply went to school and they obtained a doctorate or a master's or even a bachelor's degree in certain situations that might pertain to evolution, and 90% of the time it's not even directly related to evolution. It's like the study of like the history of science. Evolution is a proven fact. You can look at my videos about evolution if you want to understand what I mean by it and the evidence that supports it. And intelligent design is just begging the question. All right, my second example, which creationists love, is the flood. Now, I find this particularly interesting because I have a pretty extensive background in geology. So when they go around and throw out things like these are just a bunch of sedimentary layers, I know that means a lot more than what they think it means. Now, the geological layers that we find, for instance, in the Grand Canyon, could not, period, have been formed in a flood. Now, they know certain layers are sedimentary, but they don't know what that means. Now, when we're looking at layers, we're looking at the rounding of the rocks, the size of the rocks, the sorting of the rocks, the type of the rocks, the composition of the rocks. And all of these rocks are laid down under different depositional environments, meaning a flood could not account for all the different layers because some of these layers are laid at the bottom of oceans, some of these layers are laid in streams, and the types of rounding and sorting of the rocks depends on the speed of the stream, the thickness of the stream. It cannot have been laid down in a flood. And the Grand Canyon is an insane example because the Grand Canyon contains rocks like limestone, which are insanely hard. And there's no way you could have a flood carve out the Grand Canyon in what they say is a matter of minutes. It wouldn't happen. There would be a debris pile at the end of the Grand Canyon that would consist of all that material that's missing in the Grand Canyon. We do not find this huge jagged debris pile of rocks, and the layering across the side of the Grand Canyon is not consistent with the flood either. It has stepped layers which shows different levels of the rivers rising and falling. This is aside from the fact that you cannot fit two of every kind and 5 or 7, I forgot what the number is, of the clean animals and 2 of the unclean animals. Not to mention their poop, their pee, their food, and it's only 7 people on this boat who are taking care of all these animals. This thing has been thoroughly debunked. The Grand Canyon, if you look at it, this thing clearly took millions and millions of years to, one, lay down these layers, which are laid down in a variety of very distinct environments, and 2, it took millions and millions and millions of years to carve it out. When I look at the Grand Canyon, my breath is taken away. Also because I'm a geology nerd, just by the sheer amount of time it would take to create this thing. So the flood is bull. There's no evidence to support it. And if you guys want to really look for evidence for a flood, the Grand Canyon's probably the worst place for you to go. And if you disagree with that and you're a creationist, feel free to comment on this video and I will take care of your comments accordingly. All right, let's go to my third example, and that would be what we call the geologic column, and specifically index fossils. Now, creationists really like to hammer on the geologic column, claiming it uses some kind of circular reasoning. They say use rocks to date the fossils and use fossils to date the rocks. Well, all the layers are dated by the age of the layer, and you can use certain index fossils in a group of fossils where they overlap, and you can use that to approximate a date. Not an exact date, it's a relative date, and that's just used for expediency. If you're out in the field and you find this certain group of fossils, you can have a good idea of what the age of that rock layer is. But you still would use absolute dating using radioactive isotopes to actually date that layer. And we have never found out-of-place fossils, ever. And when I say that, they like to use examples of things we thought were extinct, like coelacanths. And we have found coelacanths, and they're isolated in a certain part of the world. But guess what? These aren't identical to the coelacanths that we found in the past. They're distinctly different than those coelacanths, and we can identify that. And the point kind of is, we're not so much worried about a fossil that we thought was extinct and then somehow it was actually isolated in a part of the world, we find it in a rock layer. That's not going to somehow disprove our theory. A better example would be an animal that we know evolved later on, like a pig. And if we found a pig fossil in a Jurassic layer or something crazy early like that, well, yes, that would violate our theory. If that pig fossil was in fact in that layer of rock, not a boulder that fell down a crack, like an actual part of that rock layer consisting of these other organisms. And this has never happened. Same thing with the Precambrian. We don't find any kind of mammal fossils. There are some examples of mammals that are found in the Jurassic, but these aren't modern mammals. These aren't Darien mammals. These are proto-mammals. And the fact that they use the word mammal really catches up to creationists. They like to say that's a gotcha, we found a mammal. It's not a mammal as they're known today. Mammals evolved like everything else, so the precursors of mammals obviously had to live in the Jurassic, and that's what we're talking about. We're not talking about modern mammals. So the geologic column has held true for over 200 years, and there's really nothing to it. The creationists have never found an out-of-place fossil. They don't even really spend money on looking. They just try to invent elaborate ways to get around it. They say intelligent animals climbed up higher during the flood, which is odd, and why don't we just find fossils at the peaks of mountains for advanced life? I don't know. Their arguments don't make much sense. It's bull. Geologic column holds. Earth is old. I'm sorry. And if you disagree with that, by all means, comment on this video, and I'll take care of your comments accordingly. All right, let's move on to point number 4. One of the favorite things of apologists and creationists to claim is that atheists are responsible for all the horrible things that have happened during the 20th century. A big example is Hitler. They like to tie it to Nazis and Hitler. So let me throw this out. On the Nazis' belt buckles, it had God is with us in German. And they were a group of Christians who were persecuting their best buddies, the Jews. So I think enough said. And lastly, this is my favorite example. When we're looking at the Bible, there are no extra biblical sources of any miracle of any kind. There are no extra biblical sources to support the fact that there was a flood, Adam and Eve existed, there's a Garden of Eden. There's no evidence for God whatsoever. And there's no evidence to support the Bible's miraculous claims outside of the Bible. The best they even have is evidence that they actually lived in the cities they were talking about, possibly at the time they were talking about, but they elaborated, possibly lied about certain things, or they were writing after the fact. And while we're talking about it, there are no contemporary sources to corroborate the existence of Jesus Christ himself. Yes, I said it. Now, I'm not claiming that Jesus didn't exist. I would probably suspect that the Bible's myth on Jesus was likely based on someone, possibly named Jesus, or maybe a group of people, but they were written after the fact. They weren't written during the fact. And during the time that Jesus supposedly existed, no one else wrote about him. And the Bible makes some pretty miraculous claims about Jesus. They talk about mobs going to the temples, the Jewish temples. There is no evidence of this. There's no evidence the Romans had of Jesus, of his persecution. All the evidence of Jesus comes way after. And all this really proves is the existence of Christians, not the existence of Jesus. So your whole Bible's foundation is based on probably an untruth. So I'm not really trying to make this video to truly be unfair to creationists or Christians, but just to make a point that they like to go out and make a lot of elaborate claims, and then they like to silence all opposition. They're not interested in true dialogue. Now, I am interested in true dialogue, and all my other videos are open to dialogue, but this one video and this one video alone, I'm going to have some fun, and I'm going to use the delete function on the comments on YouTube. And if you guys have any other ideas of how I could accomplish this, go ahead and send me a message, let me know. And if you claim to be an atheist and you criticize this video, I might just assume you're a creationist. So if I delete a few atheist comments too, I'm sorry. But it's mainly for atheists who want to go ahead and get their point out, express their frustration with being deleted or edited on YouTube, being flagged unfairly on YouTube. Having creationists create fake YouTube pages to argue with them and just delete them afterwards, or delete the comments they made towards them, or all the myriad of ways that they find to argue dishonestly on YouTube. Now, this is directed to people who edit their comments. It's directed to people who set them for approval and only approve comments that support their position. I don't really have an issue with creationists who just block all comments altogether, or atheists that block all comments altogether. I understand that people on YouTube say some crazy stuff, and let's say you want your video to be available to people of all ages, or people who might not be comfortable with certain types of language or discourse. That's fine if you block comments altogether, but if you're going to allow comments and you're going to bias them in a way that supports your position for no reason other than to support your position, not because they were being vulgar or threatening or abusive, but just because they were showing your position to be flawed, well, that's dishonest discourse and it shouldn't be done. But I'm doing it on this video just to make an example, so have fun with it. We'll see how this goes, and I'll see you guys later.